March 2003, American and coalition forces crossed the border into Iraq and, within 3 weeks, have driven Saddam Hussein's army from the field in one of the most decisive conventional military campaigns in modern history. By May 1st, the president declares the end of major combat operations, and then the real war begins. The insurgency that followed, fueled by disbanded Iraqi military personnel, foreign fighters, sectarian militia, and Al-Qaeda in Iraq, would drag on for years, kill thousands of American service members, and introduce a weapon system to the American consciousness that had never before been used against U.S. forces at this scale. Today, we are breaking down the full arsenal that American soldiers and Marines faced in Iraq, from the conventional weapons of the Iraqi Republican Guard to the improvised systems of the insurgency that redefined what it meant to fight in a post-conventional war. Let's get into it. Iraq's military was armed almost entirely with Soviet and Eastern Bloc weapons, and the primary infantry rifle was the AKM, the modernized stamped receiver AK-47, chambered in 7.62 by 39 millimeters, reliable to a fault, and present in numbers that defied comprehension. When the Iraqi army dissolved in 2003, an estimated 4.2 million small arms were left unsecured across the country. Those weapons flowed directly into the hands of the insurgency. The AKM became the standard weapon of every faction: Sunni insurgents, Shia militia, foreign fighters, because it was everywhere. It was free, and it never stopped working. American soldiers who cleared houses, vehicles, and cache sites in Iraq handled more AKMs than any other weapon by orders of magnitude. The AK-47 that Soviet engineers designed in 1947, that North Vietnamese soldiers carried in the jungle, that Viet Cong used in ambushes, was now in the alleys of Fallujah and the palm groves of the Euphrates Valley, being used against the grandchildren of the soldiers who faced it the first time. Iraq produced a domestic variant of the AK-47 family, chambered in 7.62 by 39 millimeters with an elongated barrel and scope rail, the Tabuk sniper rifle. Not a precision sniper weapon by Western standards, but effective as a designated marksman rifle at ranges beyond normal AKM accuracy. Iraqi and insurgent marksmen used the Tabuk to engage American forces at 300 to 500 meter ranges, distances at which the standard AKM's accuracy degraded significantly, but a scoped Tabuk remained effective. In the urban warfare that characterized much of Iraq, Mosul, Fallujah, Baghdad, Sadr City, a rooftop marksman with a Tabuk covering an intersection could halt American movement and force lengthy, resource-intensive clearing operations to dislodge him. The RPG-7 from Vietnam had not retired. In Iraq, it was arguably the insurgency's most dangerous conventional anti-armor and anti-personnel weapon. The unsecured Iraqi military stocks left behind after the 2003 invasion included enormous quantities of RPG-7 launchers and warheads, estimated in the hundreds of thousands of rounds. Insurgents used them against Humvees, Bradley fighting vehicles, M1 Abrams tanks, helicopters, and convoys. An RPG-7 round that impacts an unarmored Humvee is immediately catastrophic. Even against the M1 Abrams, one of the most heavily armored vehicles ever fielded, RPG hits to the rear, top, and tracks were a real threat. The insurgency developed tactics specifically to maximize RPG effectiveness, channeling vehicles into kill zones using IEDs, then engaging the RPGs from elevated or flanking positions when the convoy stopped. Complex ambushes built around the RPG-7 killed Americans in Iraq for a decade. The PKM, Pulemyot Kalashnikova Modernizorovny was the Soviet general-purpose machine gun that appeared throughout Iraqi military and insurgent inventories. Chambered in 7.62 by 54 mm R, the same cartridge as the Mosin Nagant and Dragunov, the PKM was belt-fed, air-cooled, and capable of delivering accurate automatic fire at ranges up to 800 meters with a cyclic rate of around 650 rounds per minute. Light enough for one man to carry and set up quickly, powerful enough to defeat light cover and vehicle glass at extended ranges. Insurgents used PKMs to establish beaten zones, predictable lanes of sustained fire designed to keep American forces pinned while other elements maneuvered or escaped. In the street fighting of Fallujah during Operation Phantom Fury in November 2004, one of the largest urban combat operations since Hue City in Vietnam, Marines encountered PKM positions prepared in depth throughout the city. Clearing them was slow, costly, and brutal work. Iraq's standard service pistol was the Tariq, a domestic copy of the Italian Beretta M951, chambered in 9mm parabellum with an 8-round single-stack magazine. Reliable enough, unexceptional in every way, notable primarily as a collector item today. Iraqi officers and Ba'ath Party officials carried them throughout the Saddam era. After 2003, they turned up in enormous quantities in weapons caches across the country. Like almost everything in the Iraqi conventional arsenal, the Tariq ended up in insurgent hands simply because there were so many of them and no one was watching where they went. The improvised explosive device, the IED, was the weapon that defined the Iraq War for American forces more than any other. Not a rifle, not a rocket launcher. A bomb buried in a road, attached to a pressure plate or a command wire, or a cell phone trigger. Detonated remotely when an American vehicle drove over it or past it. IEDs caused approximately 60% of American combat deaths in Iraq. Let me say that again. 60%. More American service members were killed by buried bombs than by all rifles, machine guns, rockets, and mortars combined. The insurgency understood something fundamental. You do not need to outshoot the United States military. You need to make every road a potential death trap and let the cumulative psychological and physical toll do the work. Early IEDs were simple. Artillery shells wired to basic triggers. As the war progressed, they became increasingly sophisticated. Explosively formed penetrators, EFPs, used a shaped copper disc that the explosion converted into a high-velocity slug capable of penetrating the side armor of an M1 Abrams. These were supplied largely through Iranian networks to Shia militia groups and represented a level of sophistication that went well beyond anything an individual insurgent built in a garage. The vehicle-borne IED, the VBIED or car bomb, was the mass casualty weapon of the Iraq insurgency. A car or truck packed with artillery shells, commercial explosives, or homemade TATP, driven by a suicide bomber or triggered remotely, and detonated in a market, at a checkpoint, or against a convoy. The blast radius of a large VBIED measured in hundreds of meters. The psychological impact on both Iraqi civilians and American forces of an attack that could come from any vehicle at any time, in any location, was profound and lasting. Soldiers and Marines developed a hyper-awareness of vehicles that crowded, slowed, or behaved unusually near their convoys. A survival instinct that many veterans carried home with them long after the war. Beyond the IED, insurgent snipers, some trained, some simply experienced, created significant casualties and operational disruption throughout the war. In Ramadi in 2006, sniper activity became so intense that American forces had to develop specific counter-sniper protocols and adjust patrol routes and timing constantly. The most lethal insurgent snipers used Dragunov SVD rifles supplied through Iran and Syria, or large caliber rifles including the Austrian Steyr HS-50, a civilian anti-material rifle chambered in 50 BMG that found its way into insurgent hands through weapons trafficking networks. A 50 caliber round at combat ranges is not something body armor stops. The presence of even a single effective sniper in an urban area could shut down American freedom of movement in an entire neighborhood for days. Beyond IEDs and direct fire weapons, insurgents in Iraq made extensive use of mortars, particularly 60mm and 82mm systems from the enormous Iraqi military stockpiles left unsecured after 2003. A mortar crew could set up in a vacant lot, fire a half-dozen rounds at an American base, and be gone before the rounds impacted. Indirect fire attacks on American forward operating bases were a daily reality throughout much of the war. The psychological toll of living under that threat, the alarm klaxons, sprinting to blast shelters, the constant calculation of seconds between launch and impact based on the sound, was a sustained, wearing stress that ground on American service members across entire deployments in ways that conventional combat alone does not. Iranian-backed Shia militia groups Jaish al-Mahdi and Kataib Hezbollah were supplied with 107mm and 122mm Katyusha-type rockets through Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force networks. These unguided rockets, fired from simple tube launchers that could be set up and abandoned in minutes, struck American bases throughout southern Iraq and the international zone in Baghdad. Iranian supply networks also provided the explosively formed penetrators that killed American soldiers in some of the war's most lethal IED attacks, a direct state-sponsored weapons program conducted against American forces that was an open secret throughout the conflict. Not all the weapons in Iraq were improvised. Some of them came from a government with deliberate policy approval through organized supply chains. Al-Qaeda in Iraq and affiliated groups used suicide vests, garments packed with explosives and metal fragmentation detonated by the wearer against American troops and Iraqi civilians. The fragmentation pattern of a vest detonation in a crowd or at a checkpoint is catastrophic and indiscriminate. American troops manning entry control points and vehicle checkpoints operated within the constant awareness that any approaching person was a potential threat, requiring immediate assessment and potentially lethal force decisions made in seconds. The moral and psychological weight of those decisions, made hundreds of times per deployment, is a burden that many Iraq veterans carry permanently. What made the Iraqi insurgency's weapons so effective was not their individual lethality. An AKM is not dramatically more lethal than an M4. It was the tactical system built around them. The insurgency understood that it did not need to defeat American forces in a conventional engagement. It needed to impose costs, psychological, physical, political, at a rate that the American public would not indefinitely sustain. Every IED that forced a reroute, every sniper who kept American forces inside their bases, every mortar attack that disrupted operations was a point on a scoreboard that the insurgency was keeping differently than the American military. American doctrine measured success in battles won, territory held, insurgents killed. The insurgency measured success in American patience exhausted. The weapons were the instrument of that strategy. A PKM on a rooftop is a gun. A PKM on a rooftop that forces an entire battalion to change its patrol patterns is a strategic tool. Iraq forced the United States military to fundamentally rethink its approach to force protection, route clearance, vehicle armor, and counter-IED technology. The MRAP, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle was developed and fielded largely in response to the IED threat. Counter-IED task forces, electronic jamming systems, and route clearance procedures that did not exist before 2003 became standard doctrine because of what happened on Iraqi roads. The insurgency in Iraq demonstrated that a determined adversary with AKMs, RPGs, and improvised explosives could impose enormous costs on the world's most powerful military, not by winning battles, but by making every single day operationally exhausting and psychologically wearing. In video 6, the final video in this series, we are going to Afghanistan, the longest war in American history, the Taliban, the Mujahideen, and a weapons mix that combined everything we have discussed in this series: AKMs, RPGs, PKMs, IEDs, with the rugged mountain terrain of the Hindu Kush, which is itself one of the most brutal fighting environments on Earth, plus the specific weapons the CIA gave the Mujahideen in the 1980s that eventually ended up pointed back at American soldiers. Video 6 is the finale. It is worth the wait. If this breakdown changed how you think about modern warfare, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with a veteran who knows exactly what we are talking about today. Stay safe, stay armed. We will see you on the next one.